It is a common misconception that wealthy countries do not have slaves or slavery, and many people find it shocking when they find out that modern slavery is still a big issue to this day. For example, Singapore, the second richest country per capita in the world, has many people who suffer from modern slavery. As stated by the 2019 Trafficking in Persons report, Singapore is considered a Tier 2 country. This means that although the country doesn't follow many of the Trafficking Victims Protection Act's minimum standards, the country still makes somewhat of an effort to protect people who are enslaved or trafficked. Like previously mentioned, Singapore is a highly rich and developed country. The country's biggest industries and main sources of income are financial services, energy and infrastructure, biotechnology, tourism, and communications technology. Jobs that require working in factories, construction, and manual labor are mostly done by immigrants who moved from Singapore's poorer neighboring countries looking for better job opportunities. It is believed that Singapore has around 9,200 people living in slave-like conditions. These slave-like conditions include human trafficking, sex trafficking, forced labor, and debt bondage. Traffickers looking to earn money in the human trafficking business seek vulnerable people living in poorer countries, and they offer them job opportunities. Singapore, along with every other country, has a constant demand for low-wage workers. When traffickers bring in immigrants who are willing to work for low wages, they can earn a lot of money. The country also has a high demand for commercial sex. Traffickers use the country's wealth to convince victims that if they move to Singapore, they will have many job opportunities. Once the victim is in the country, the trafficker will take away their papers, passport, visa, etc., and demand that the debt be paid. The debt includes transportation, agent fees, recruitment, visa, identification documents, medical examinations, and commendation fees. The trafficker gives the victim no other option but to either enter debt bondage, become a sex slave, do construction work, or domestic work. Child trafficking is not unheard of in Singapore. Children are brought in from the Philippines, Cambodia, Thailand, India, Sri Lanka, and China. Many children want to look for jobs to help their family earn money, but instead most end up in sex trafficking. To stop child labor, Singapore passed the Employment Act. Children below the age of 13 cannot do any type of work. Children between the ages 13 and 15 can do light work but can't work in industrial settings unless their family members are working there too. People over 15 can do light, non-industrial work and heavy work in industrial settings. Children between the ages 13 and 16 that are still attending school can work up to 7 hours a day and cannot work in dangerous settings. You might be wondering, what are the penalties for human trafficking and how are the punishments decided? People can be considered human traffickers if they encourage human trafficking, received payment in connection to the victim, harbored victims in their home, if the offender abused a position of trust or authority in relation to the victim, if the offender was the victim's spouse or partner, and many other reasons. The aggravating factors when determining the trafficker's punishments are serious injury or death of the victim, was the victim a child, were they vulnerable, pregnant, ill, infirm, or disabled, were they exposed to life-threatening diseases, was the victim threatened with drugs or a weapon, etc. The maximum penalty is 10 years and up to 6 strokes of the cane. Some people are obligated to pay a fine. A repeated offender gets double of what the first offender would receive. Hagar Organization is an NGO that is dedicated to the recovery of women and children who have endured extreme abuses, sex trafficking, and others. Singapore's government has been under fire a few times because authorities assigned to help human trafficking victims didn't fully understand that victims can be scarred not only physically but mentally, and the impact on their mental health was just as big as it was on their physical health, if not bigger. Hagar Organization helps victims improve their mental health and helps them overcome the obstacles that come with being a human trafficking survivor. The organization works to free communities and help victims heal from the trauma of human trafficking, slavery, and abuse. They say desperate times call for desperate measures. So when 14-year-old Lilith's mother died, she knew that she had to do something to help her family. Lilith lived in Indonesia. When her mother died, she started looking for jobs and was offered a great job opportunity in Singapore. The person told her that she would either work as a nanny or at a cafe. Shortly after arriving in Singapore, she was informed by her friend that her actual job was to work at a brothel. Lili's job entailed having to solicit men and go to hotels with them and serve them. She was forced to wear revealing clothes and share a room with 4 other women. One day, a man specifically asked for her, and her agent forced her to go with him. When she was alone with the man, she broke down crying, saying she couldn't do it. The man realized that she was there against her will and asked her to run away. Seeing her chance, Lilith ran. A cabbie picked her up and she explained the situation to him. The driver took her immediately to the police. She reported what happened to the police and they arrested her agent. Lilith claimed to be happy now and is grateful that both men helped her escape. Lilith was trained as a beautician while in an NGO and is now back home working as an apprentice at a beauty salon. Sadly, the case of Lilith is not the only one. Like I said, modern slavery is an issue in Singapore, even though the country's government has put in some effort to stop it from happening.